So you want to determine the area or perimeter of different shapes like a square or circle using Excel. First, let's look at what we do know. In a given rectangle or square, the sides, side 1, side 2, we'll call this for the moment, side 3, side 4, these sides, if we add them all together, is going to equal to the perimeter. And so I've modeled a formula here. Now, in a perfect square or rectangle, side 1 and side 3, they're equal to each other. So we would just call it 2 times side 1 would cover these two sides. And of course, the side 2 and the opposite of it are equal. So if we multiply 2 times side 1 plus 2 times side 2, that should give us our perimeter. And that's our formula. That's something we're supposed to know already. So perimeter is going to equal that. Area, same way really. Side 1 times side 2 is going to equal the given area. And let's put that in a formula using these values for the sides. As always, when we start a formula, we press the equal sign. And in this case, we're going to choose the value for side 1. I'm going to use the arrows this time to move my active cell over to select that. And since this is perimeter, it's going to equal this times 2. So I'll use the operator to multiply, then the operator to add this side times 2. That looks like my perimeter. And if I consider a square that has sides each equaling 1, then the perimeter should be 4. Let's look at the area. Now the area is supposed to equal side 1 times side 2. So I'll just this time click on it, side 1. I'll use the asterisk as my operator. And side 2. Press enter to close the formula. And 1 times 1 is 1. Well, now that that's done, I can use series to complete the calculations for all these different sides. So think of this as like the next side square, or this is a square that's 2 by 2, a square or rectangle 2 by 3, and so on. And these are my answers. Given this shape, these dimensions of squares and rectangles, their perimeters and areas are calculated. Let's move on to something a little harder. Let's go to circles. Now, in a given circle, we know some formulas already, like the diameter is 2 times the radius, or the radius is half of the diameter. Given a radius for this circle, we can calculate the diameter. So let's do that. It's going to equal 2 times the radius. So that's done. Area has a little bit more complicated formula. We're using a value or a function called pi. Well, that's actually a static value. In other words, pi can be calculated, what is it, 3.141592, something like that. We don't have to memorize that in Excel. We can say that it's going to equal, and then actually type pi and parentheses. Because this function, we're not really sending anything, so we would just put 2 parentheses there. And pi times the radius, which is an asterisk for the multiplication. There's the radius, but it's raised to the power of 2. Now that's a new function. Turns out that the symbol on your keyboard, I think it's shift number 6, we'll call it the hat sign, or I call it the hat sign, but it's the caret. That will raise to the power of 2. Think of it as an up arrow raising to the power of 2. And now I simply press enter, and I have my formula. So I can test this out on a calculator, but I believe that the area is going to be, for a circle with a diameter of 2, of 12.56. Next is circumference, and the formula for circumference is going to equal 2 times, and you've guessed it, pi, and times the radius. Put in my operator, and what is my radius? 2. I'll click on it, I'll press enter. So now we can have calculations for circles of a radius of 2, 3, 4, and 5 by simply using the select tool or the series tool to copy down. Our next area to look at is going to be a right triangle. Now in there, we're going to use a square root, and I've modeled the formula up here using symbols to help describe it. So first, the perimeter. The perimeter is going to, let's see if we can talk this through. The perimeter is going to be this side plus this side plus this side. but it's this side that we have to calculate, and that's not simple. Given the base and the height, what is this side? Well, the side can be calculated using the Pythagorean theorem. It's the square root of the sum of b squared plus h squared, or the height squared times the base. So let's see if we can model that. We'll start with the equal sign as always, and it's going to equal the height plus the base. Okay, so I have those two plus, and now we have to get clever. We don't have a symbol for square root, so we have to write it out. And I want you to notice I put the formula over here on the side to use, just to help you figure this out. But if you didn't have that formula, how would you do this? Well, for any formula that you're familiar with, an operator, or a function rather, like square root, we'll just start to type the letters, SQ, and see what comes up. Excel offers suggestions. So here's square root. If I choose that, it will actually tell us that we need to put the number inside there. Well, we've already got our first parenthesis. So now we just need to follow our math rules. It's going to equal the square root of. So we'll click over here to get the base, and I'll raise that by using that shift number 6, or the caret, power of 2, and the parenthesis. Now we'll do my addition, the addition operator, another parenthesis, and this time I'm going to type in E26. And the reason I did is because my column width is narrow, and Excel wants me to see the whole formula, and it's hard to click on this, so I'm just going to type in E26 because that's the cell where the height is. I'll close my parenthesis. For this, oh, I forgot the raise it to the power of 2. Now I've closed the parenthesis. So I've opened and closed parentheses for my squaring of the two values. Now I need to close the parenthesis for square root, so I'll add one more parenthesis. Notice the parentheses colors match. In other words, the green parentheses surround this and this operation, and the brown parentheses surround the entire function that's going to be return the value that's square rooted. Okay, so I press enter, and I should have a value of 5.23. Area should be easier. Area of a triangle, isn't that base times height divided by 2? Because if this were a square, it would be base times height. But since a triangle bisects or cuts in half that rectangle, it's divided by 2. Let's do that one. That one's easy. You should be able to do this on your own without me. Equals the base. Here's the base. Operator's asterisk times the height divided by 2. And because these are all multiplication, division operations, there's no order, so we don't have to use parentheses. So just press enter, and it's done. So if I have a base of 1, a height of 2, that's going to do, for a square or a rectangle, that's going to have an area of 2, and half of that is 1, so I think that's good. Now, select these two cells, create a series down, and I've now calculated the values for all of these. And did you also know that in Excel, if I change one of the initial or static values, if I change this 5 to a 6, when I change the cell, move the active cell to any other cell or press enter, it automatically recalculates. That's handy to know. That's one of the powers of Excel. Now, let's take a look at something and a formula that we may not know from our studies in math. It's a science that we're just not familiar with, but we can still use Excel to calculate our answers. And that is Ohm's law. Ohm's law has to do with the science of electricity. And Ohm's law defines the fact that E, being electrical volts, is going to equal the product of current I, measured in amps, times resistance, measured in ohms. And I've listed that out here. So given this, say you're in a science class, you're given this formula, we should still be able to, using algebra, calculate formulas that will generate formulas that will calculate our answers. So I've put some formulas over here. You won't necessarily use all of these formulas, but we should be able to derive, using our algebra, these formulas and then calculate what we need. So current, if I wanted to calculate current given volts and ohms, current measured in amps, I would have to say that current, here is the formula for current. Current is going to equal the volts divided by the resistance, or E divided by R. So I'll just type that formula in. It's going to equal E, use the operator, divide and R. I press enter, and the current is going to equal 4 amps. In a 12-volt system like a car, if we had only 3 ohms to our stereo system, it's going to take 4 amps, or our lights. And for watts, well, we have another formula. Watts, that's the amount of power used in a given length of time, is going to equal volts times amps. So, in this case, I'll say that it's going to equal the volts, which is again the 12, times, I'll use my asterisk operator to multiply, and amps, which is our newly calculated value. And I'll press enter. So I can select this series and drag down, and now I've calculated volts and amps given these values. Well, good. Let's move on to something a little less defined. Let's go to a worksheet and see if we can be challenged to solve some of this ourselves. This video happened to stretch out long enough, so it had to be cut into 2 parts. So look for Excel area part 2.